Dr. Archana, you can start with the introduction.
Yes, sir. A very good morning to all. It's my privilege to welcome and introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Anirudh M. Thakur, sir, Director Sipla, with a brief introduction. Dr. Anirudh Malik Thakur completed his undergraduate and postgraduate education from West Bengal University, Animal and Fisheries Sciences from 1995 to 2005. He did his specialization in surgery and radiology. From 2006, he started his career as a scientist in Reliance Life Sciences. In his earlier days, he worked mainly on the application of stem cell therapy in neurodegenerative and cardiovascular disease. He has published many publications on stem cell research, basically on Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, brain stroke, ischemic limb disease, cardiac ischemia, etc. He also had a significant contribution in developing multiple biosimilars like Devazi, Adimumbum, PG, GCSF, etc. He left Reliance Life Sciences in 2012 as a senior research scientist. In 2012, Dr. Anifran joined Stempeutics as the head of stem cell applications and its R&D activities. He had contributed immensely on the first stem cell therapy approved in India as a stem cells. In 2013, Dr. Anirban joined Leaders Cadila, that Cadila Healthcare Limited. In a short stint, he was working after mainly preclinical and toxicological research. In 2014, Dr. Anirban joined Cipla Limited. He is currently working as a director and functional head of preclinical toxicology and in vitro. His main area of research in anti-HIV, oncology, pain, etc. He is currently more involved in developing medicine for India and developed countries like USA and Europe. Uh, Now I welcome to this 21 days training program, sir, and I thank Dr. Anirudh Thakur, sir, for giving this opportunity. Thank you all.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Archana, and thank you, Dr. Nimai, for giving this opportunity. And I really look forward for this two-way communication so that I can give whatever information I have learned till my journey. So what I will just already Dr. Archana has given some brief introduction about me, but still I thought I will give something. So I'm lucky to done my BBSc, MBSc, and PhD from West Bengal University of Animal and Fishery Science, which spans from 1995 to 2005. After that, I thought that I will pursue my career in something in research and development. So I joined 2006 Reliance Life Sciences. It's a firm basically targeted towards the stem cell research and biosimilars and biologics. So I worked there for around 6 years, and I worked basically on stem cell research and biologics. So as you know that right now people are working on multiple stem cell therapy as well as biologics. Biologics are the next generation pharmaceuticals. Then I joined Stempeutics as a stem cell applications specialist, and I worked for a very short period of time. And after that, I joined Zydus Cadila, which is one of the premier pharmaceutical company who I worked with the new chemical entities. And then 2014, I had joined Cipla as director. And from 2014 onwards, I'm working with Cipla, and I basically take care of preclinical toxicology and in vitro. And before I starting this presentation, I just want to tell that I feel very lucky to be a veterinarian. As you know, that we all always devote our life for the people for the animals who cannot speak, and we look after them. And then whatever research I did till date and whatever research I am doing are basically based on animal physiology and animal anatomy. Though I work for human pharmaceuticals, but then my research is through animals. Okay,
So,
so
so,
going to the
so thank you. Welcome to our platform, Dr. Thakur. Sir, we are eagerly waiting for your sharing of your expertise. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nima. So, as you know, that research is very big thing. It is not possible to cover everything what are non-governmental organizations is going on in 1 hour. So, my emphasis will be basically on pharmaceutical research. What is trending in pharmaceutical research? So, as I have spent 15 years of my life in pharmaceutical research. So I will be focusing mainly on pharmaceutical research. And I just wanted to give a disclaimer that whatever presentation is given in the next slide, that is my personal view. This is not a view of CIPLA or any other pharmaceutical organizations or any other agencies. This is wholly and solely my views, and you can feel free to stop me if you have any questions in between my presentation. So before going to the understanding what are the going on in pharmaceutical research, we need to understand what is actually pharmaceuticals, what are the kind of pharmaceuticals, and how India is contributing in the global pharmaceutical research. So if you see, the drugs are broadly classified in 4 classes. Some classes are known as small molecules. For example, every day, whatever tablets, injection we take, maximum are small molecules. They are up to maybe 3000 kilodalton. They are small molecules. They're easy to manufacture. They're easy to do the research. They are like paracetamol or diclofenac or any anti-cancer drug therapies. And then there are molecules which are large, which are usually biologic in nature. For example, if you are manufacturing a hormone or we are manufacturing monoclonal antibodies. And everybody knows nowadays vaccines, right? Everybody's got a sort of vaccines, COVID vaccines, or even when we were small kids, we had been taken a different vaccines. So there are again the vaccine. And then the last fourth is cell-based therapy, human plasma, anti-serum, etc., like snake anti-serum or human plasma. When somebody is got a burn injury, he has depleted all his plasma, then you need to give the plasma or cell-based, stem cell-based therapies. So these are the 4 broad category. However, having said, there are many other kinds of therapy as well, like medical device, radio pharmaceuticals, and other things. I'm not going to increase the complexity. So keep in mind that these are the main 4 areas where pharmaceutical companies are doing basic research, and they're trying to develop new therapies every day. Now, when we are coming to this, there are different kinds of drugs, right? There are new chemical entities and then generic drugs. What I want to mean that whenever a pharmaceutical company is developing a drug, that might be a new chemical entity or that might be already approved product by somebody else. We are just copying that product. So now in India, there is a concept that generic drug and brand drug. Actually, it's a misnomer. Nothing is called brand drug. Everything is called either new chemical entity or generic. What is new chemical entity? Now, suppose paracetamol is developed or discovered by some company X. So they are the proprietary owner of the new chemical entity. So paracetamol developed by that company is a new chemical entity. Now paracetamol is developed by Cipla or Dr. Reddy or Sun Pharma or Lupin. That will not be considered as a brand drug or something. That all drugs will be considered as a generic drugs because we are just copying that. Similarly, for the large molecules, whenever somebody has discovered bevacizumab or maybe adalimumab, that will be called as new biological entity. Now, henceforth, whichever company develop a new, copying these biosimilars, like adalimumab, bevacizumab, that will be called as biosimilars. They will be not be a new drug or brand drug. They are all biosimilars. So you should understand that India is the pharmaceutical capital for the generic drugs. We are not the pharmaceutical capitals of new chemical entity. And you might be surprised to know in last 60, 70 years after independence, we might have discovered only 3 or 4 drugs, which is a new chemical entity, which is developed in India and discovered in India. Remaining all drugs are generic drugs. You take it paracetamol, you take it diclofenac, you take it whatever. So first, actually, pharmaceutical drug which got discovered from India, maybe ormeloxifene. I don't know how many of you know ormeloxifene, which was discovered by CDRI, Central Drug Research Institute, which is sold in India as a Saheli, which is a contraceptive. So that was the first drug which I know was discovered first in India. Then there was another drug, saroglitazar, which got discovered recently. And fortunately, I was the part of that discovery, saroglitazar, which was developed by Zydus Cadila in the year most probably 2018 or 19. But both the drug is only approved in India. They are not approved outside India. So I want to clarify here that whenever you are talking about brand or generic, that's nothing called brand drug or nothing called, everything is generic. Either this is a new chemical entity or new molecular entity, or it's a generic drug. Okay. So going towards the next study, that pharmaceutical research is a big area. It takes lots of time. I do not know how many of them knew. I will come back to that in the next slide. That pharmaceutical research, whenever you need to discover a drug, you have to spend lots of time, on an average 12 to 15 years. So now suppose you have started developing a drug today, it will see the light of Earth after 15 years, and only if you are successful in every stage. So first is what you do, you first identify a molecule. Now suppose we are taking a small molecule. So we identify molecules and we think that that molecule can be a medicine. So you first what we to do, now suppose you are developing a drug against diabetes. So you have to make sure that a drug, whether if it is insulin dependent or if it is suppose GLP agonist, you have to make sure that that chemical, whatever the drug, that drug that drug binds to the target, and it actually release insulin. So that first you have to do the target identification. Now suppose you are developing a drug against diabetes, your target will be something which can reduce PG2 or any inflammatory mechanism pathways. So that you have to make sure. That's called as a target. So first you identify the target, which are the target you are going to take. Then once you see the target, you have to find out the chemicals which can bind to the target. Now, a chemical which bind to a target, it might have both effects. It may reduce the effect, it may increase the effect. So now suppose you discovered a chemical which will, instead of increasing the insulin amount, it can decrease. For example, glucagon, which can, what it can do, it's not actually reduce the insulin, it will actually increase the penetration of insulin. So you have to find out that whatever chemical you have discovered that have a desired effect. Then once you have that identification, then you have to optimize. Now suppose you have developed a chemical, that chemical might not be at all possible to manufacture. So there is no fun in discovering this molecule, right? If you, and that molecule is not stable, or that molecule doesn't have is very much reactive. So you cannot develop that. So you have to, once you develop that molecule, you may have to make that molecule stable. You have to make that molecule, whether you're making in oral, then it should be orally viable. Once you do that, once a lead optimization is done, you go to preclinical research. What is preclinical research? That means that whatever you do before clinical trial. So preclinical research is usually done in animals. So you have to do what? You have to first see that efficacy. So you have to see that your molecule is effective against, now suppose you are developing a drug against diabetes. So you have to make an animal model of diabetes. There are different chemicals available, right? Like alloxan, streptozotocin. If you give alloxan or streptozotocin, what it will do, it will create artificially diabetes in animals. And then you give your drug and you have to see that whether it can cure diabetes or not, or it can at least it can decrease the blood sugar level. Then once you are satisfied that your molecule is effective against that disease, you have to do a safety assessment. Now suppose, for example, Dettol. Dettol can kill any bacteria, right? It can kill any virus. But can people consume Dettol? No, because if a person consume Dettol, he will die. So you have to make sure that whatever chemical you have discovered, that's not only efficacious, it is also safe. So to do that, you have to do safety assessment. And then once you do the safety assessment, that's a different kind of safety assessment you have to do. Then you have to do in vivo studies. You might have seen that the COVID vaccines, when first developed, it was only developed for the adults. It was not developed for the children. Or I will not say developed, it was not indicated for the children. Why? Because the safety for the children was not established at that point. It was only established safety because children are more susceptible to toxicity. So they are more privileged. So we need to do animal studies first in the small juvenile animals, and you have to prove that it is safe. Then you have to do clinical trials. Then only you can launch this product for the child. So once you do the preclinical studies, you go to the clinical trials. So clinical trials, again, it's divided into different phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So many people think that once animal studies are done, it directly goes to human studies, and there are no need of animal studies. That's actually wrong. When you will be doing phase 1 to phase 2, phase 3, in between there were many toxicity studies will be done, many animal studies will be done. For example, before phase 1 clinical trial, what it does, it usually given for a smaller period of time. Suppose you are doing a phase 1 clinical trial with a drug, you will only see that if you give the drug to humans for a single time or 2 times, whether there is any efficacy. The first one, phase 1 clinical trial, main objective, whether drug is bioavailable. The drug, whatever you are giving to humans, whether that is available in blood or it is available in target organ, For example, vaccine, whether it is giving the titer or not, that is the only objective. The phase 1 clinical trial, generally safety is not a parameter. It's actually the efficacy first, and then whether in the lower dose it is safe or not. Then once you are done, then you do phase 2 trial. Phase 2 trial is done actually in the more number of patient populations, and then you have both safety, efficacy, both you do. And then finally you do the phase 3 clinical trial, where there are a number of patient population much higher than what you do in phase 2. For example, phase 2 you do it 500 patients or 100%. Whereas phase 3 trial, you can do as high as 10,000 patients, because you have to see their larger populations, how they react to your drug. Once this your preclinical, clinical, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trial are done, you go to a regulatory agencies. For example, if you're tracking approval in India, you have to go to CDCSO, DCGI. If you want to go to approval for US, then you have to go US FDA. If you had to take approval in Europe, you have to go to EMA. So there are different regulatory agencies. So if any drug is approved in India, that doesn't mean it will get approved to US, or vice versa. If a drug is approved in US, that doesn't mean you can take it in India. You have to get approval from India also. So pharmaceutical industry is very complex. You have to take approval and from each and individual country. So every country have their own regulatory agencies. They will go through your filing and your data. Based on your data, they will give approval. So there are lots of research going on in this area, preclinical and clinical. So now, if I go in details, that there are, as I told you earlier, in preclinical research itself, there are early drug discovery and then preclinical research. So early drug discovery, what I mentioned earlier, you do a target identifications and then you find a hit. Hit means where the chemicals which will bind to the target. Then once you find the hit, you have to go to hit to lead. So now suppose you have discovered a chemical, but you cannot manufacture more than 1 gram. So there is no fun in discovering this, right? If a drug is a dose is 500 mg, you can make only 1 gram in one process, then you'll be able to make only 2 tablets per day. Is it financially viable, or it is scientifically viable? It is not. So you have to make hit to lead, and you have to optimize the lead. You have to make optimization such a way that you can make a bulk. Then you must have selected 50 chemicals. In 50 chemicals, you have to decide which one or which 2 you want to take it ahead. So you have to select the successful candidate. That's known as a drug candidate or potential drug. Then you have to do animal pharmacokinetic study, pharmacodynamic study, safety pharmacology study, toxicology study, then phase 1 clinical trial, phase 2 clinical trial, and phase 3 clinical trial. Finally, you will get the regulatory approval. So it's a very long process. So you must have thinking that COVID vaccine got approval in 1 year. Why this Dr. Anirban is talking about COVID is something exceptional because of the situation throughout the globe. It got emergency approval, emergency authorization. So that's an abbreviated research because of the global emergency. But the usual drug development process takes lots of time. So as the topic of today is the research, have you any idea how much money usually pharmaceutical companies spend in drug development research? So if you see the graph, that highest number of money spent by pharmaceuticals. So this slide has a trend up to 2020, and if you see the pharmaceutical industry spend maximum money in R&D. In any average, big pharmaceutical companies spend 30% of their revenue in research and development. It's followed by semiconductor and software. And if you see that graph is increasing, and I must not have to say that because of the COVID and other situations, these are every day growing. There are multiple pharmaceutical companies, small startups, and big companies which are spending lots of money and time and efforts on developing new pharmaceuticals. So this is a trend which is going to stay here, because as long as human civilization is there will be disease, and we need to find out the therapy for the disease. So now, if you see how much $1 billion they are spending in pharmaceutical research, 90 billion. If you see 2019 data, that annual R&D spent by pharma is 90 billion USD. So can you imagine 90 billion USD spent only for the R&D? I am not talking about here manufacturing. I am not talking about supplying the drugs. I am not talking about the cold chain. Only 90 billion USD only spent for research and development. Huge money goes in research and development. So these, until you spend money in research and development, it is not possible for developing new drugs. And as I told you earlier, so now you see that a total average money spent by different pharmaceutical companies. You can see the left side the table. GSK, like a company, every year they spend 65,360 crore INR only for research and development. And they get approval of 10 drugs. So where I want to mean 10 drugs, that means the 10 new chemical entities. I'm not talking about new generic drugs. And if you see, so as I told you earlier, a drug average time invention to market for a drug, it takes 12 years, at least 12 years, and 12 years is too conservative. It takes at least 12 years. Many cases it has been said it takes 15 to 20 years to develop a new drug. And if you see the earlier slide, if you see that preclinical development, there are so many molecules goes in preclinical, but finally only one drug get approved. So to give a perspective, every year there are 10,000 compound if you screen, then only one become drug. So you have to spend so much money to spend 10,000 molecules. After that only you will get one successful drug. And if you see the difference of NCEs, the difference of cost is 18 times. So if a NC, new chemical entity, cost 18 rupees or 19 rupees, a generic drug costs only 1 rupee. So that is the reason behind that. You have to understand that how much money they are spending in research and development. So if they're spending so much of money in research and development, they have to take it up, right? A pharmaceutical company, when they're doing business, they are doing business to make money. So if you have to take out the 65,000 USD, 65 crore rupees, they have to take it the money. So that's why NCs are very costly. So now I just wanted to ask, what is the cost of one albendazole 400 mg tablet in India? Can anybody volunteer? What would be the average cost of albendazole? Anyone? Okay. Maybe 20 rupees, right? In one albendazole tablet cost in India 20 rupees, not more than 20 rupees. Do you agree? Somebody can raise their hand. 20 to 30 rupees, right? Right.
People
So,
have written in chat 25,
yeah.
15.
Yeah. What is the cost in US? Any idea what would be the cost of one albendazole tablets in US? I don't know. I cannot see the chats. What is the cost of the same albendazole tablet in US? Any idea? $10? $5? The cost of albendazole tablet in US is 10,000 rupees. One albendazole tablet cost in US is 10,000 rupees. So that's the difference of cost between a new chemical entity, because albendazole is still new chemical entity. Because of the patent rule, you cannot copy albendazole. That's why albendazole cost in US is 10,000 rupees. One tablet costs 10,000 rupees in US. One diclofenac gel, Voltaren gel, what we use for any wounds or something, that when you have something pain, that cost in India is maybe 200 rupees a tube or 300 rupees. The same tube cost in US almost 3,000 to 4,000 rupees. So that's the cost difference between generic and new chemical entity. And to get, why then pharmaceutical company develop NCEs and NBs? Because generic drugs anyway is cheaper. Nobody is going to buy a NCEs when you have a generic version, because the new chemical entities gets 10 years exclusivity. So the first 10 years, whoever is discovered the drug, nobody else can sell that medicine. So why I'm telling this? So research and development is very, very important for any pharmaceutical company, and you should be happy to know that maximum this research happens in laboratory animals. The research, whatever pharmaceutical research we do, basically it is done on animals. Now, if you see what I was saying to cost of new chemical entity and the generics, if you see, the cost has drastically reduced. So earlier, the cost for an average US citizen used to spend 10,000 USD to buy medicines, because that time in 2001, the generic medicines was not easily available. And from the last 10 years, it's actually 20 years, the availability of generic medicines has so much available that you see the cost of average cost has become 10,000 USD to 225 USD. So that's how the things has changed, because all because of research and development done by generic company. Now, if you see the emphasis on the different therapies, the earlier the up to 2019 before COVID, the main focus was on oncologies. You know that everybody that cancer is still to some extent treatable, but it is not completely treatable until unless the patient is diagnosed in phase very early phase. The prognosis of the patient is very grim and not very favorable. So the many pharmaceutical companies focuses on oncologies, and then diabetes is definitely one of the disease which is increasing day by day because of the lifestyle, autoimmune disease, respiratory disease, and all other things, anti-HIV antiviral. So now I do not know how many of you know HIV. Earlier in 2010, a patient which has HIV, he used to live at least maximum 10 years after taking drug. But nowadays, there are so many anti-HIV drugs. There are more than 40 anti-HIV drugs. The patients who are suffering from HIV, they usually live like a normal human being. They live after even having HIV 40 years. 30 years, 40 years. There are so many anti-IgP drugs. One of the, yeah, and you must, maybe after this presentation, you may do some research that what are the contributions CIPLA has in the HIV. In Africa, in 2010, for a patient who are suffering from HIV, he has to spend 30,000 USD to buy HIV drug for 1 year. But after CIPLA entering the South Africa, their cost 30,000 USD to become 300 USD because of the huge R&D what CIPLA has spent, and they developed lots of generic products as well as new HIV therapies. And you must have seen this year KBC, one veterinarian attended, and the same question was asked, why Dr. Y.K. Hamid is considered as God in Africa. So that's the contribution has done by pharmaceutical company throughout the globe, Indian pharmaceutical companies through research and development. But there are a paradigm shift because of the COVID, right? Every one of us is affected some way or other. You can see I'm working from home because of the COVID. I'm not allowed to go to office because of this COVID situation. So now there are so many companies, pharmaceutical companies are trying to develop vaccines. Pfizer, then Moderna, then Sanofi, then Johnson & Johnson, Novavax, AstraZeneca, Merck. So see, there are how many money, there are $1 million they're spending on these vaccines. This is only what I have written the left side. That is on the they got the contribution from different pharmaceutical different agencies, and then how many millions of doses they have to see. And you must have also seen there are many molecules we have tried for COVID, like remdesivir, molnupiravir, favipiravir, dexamethasone, baricitinib, ivermectin, zinc. And I want to tell you this: remdesivir is not a new molecule. Remdesivir was there in the public. They were there for last 10 years. Remdesivir was actually used off-label for feline parvovirus. I don't know how many of you knew the remdesivir earlier last from 2010 it is getting used for the cats, but it was never approved for human use from 2010. It was a Gilead molecule, but in 2019 they got approval for COVID. Same way, molnupiravir is also earlier it was developed. It was developed against influenza. Now it is even favipiravir. It is getting repurposed for COVID. So this is all possible because of the more and more research and development. And then other multiple large molecules also in the pipeline, which are the basically MABs which are getting developed for COVID. So now, if you see, as I was trying to say, the earlier in 2010 or 90s, that number of molecules were more on small molecules, and there was less thrust on biologics. So what is the advantage of biologics? Biologics, the main advantage is biologics is are very targeted. A biologics supposed to only bind to the target organ. Now, suppose somebody was suffering from HER2 breast cancer. Earlier, they have to take paclitaxel or doxorubicin, which are very, very toxic. The patient might die because of the toxicity of the drug itself, not because of the cancer. The paclitaxel and doxorubicin are so toxic. However, because of the discovery of bevacizumab only bind to the cancer cells. So the biologics are very, very targeted and huge research needs biologics. So if you see the cost, if a vial of paclitaxel cost 100 rupees, a vial of bevacizumab cost 30,000 rupees. So that's the cost difference because the huge number of research and development goes in biologics. So here I have not focused much on the what are the research happening. So as I told you earlier, there are lots of research is needed. There are multiple research happens in this. And if you see that what are the revenues of different pharmaceutical companies, you cannot imagine. So the revenues comes from these pharmaceutical companies is $400 billion, and it is growing year by year. You see, this graph is up to 2000, maybe 19. It is not there COVID. After COVID, I'm sure this consumption has increased in at least 2 to 3 fold. So this much amount of money pharmaceutical companies are getting only because they have a robust R&D in pipeline. Until unless you have robust research and development, you will never able to finish achieve this target. And if you see the research, how much amount of funding going in research, see every year it is increasing. There was because of recession, maybe 2005-6, there was some decrease in amount, but after that it is again steadily increasing. This is what average pharmaceutical companies spend in research and development. So now I will spend considerable time in this slide. So as because this today's you want to know what are the different areas of research and development happening. So I will first of all, I don't know how many of us heard of artificial intelligence. So 10 years back when we used to do drug development research, we used to do trial and error. So we used to make the chemicals, we used to produce these chemicals, and we used to try in high throughput screening. I know maybe you know about high throughput screening. So high throughput screening is nothing. It's a where you can check thousands of molecules in one go. So there will be small petri plates. In petri plates, there will be targets, whatever target you have identified, and you mix each chemicals in each petri plates, and you see that how reaction happens and how the target reacts. So this is what was the conventional process. You have to screen thousands of molecules, and then you have to find it out which molecules is going to hit the target, and then you have to select which are the three or 5 or 10 molecules which are giving more positive reaction, and you select that. However, recently, what is the trend? There is an artificial intelligence. We have tried to develop the softwares. One of the biggest software manufacturer must be knowing IBM. So we have able to find out the softwares. You no longer have to do the initial high throughput screening, or you have to do in vitro studies or in vivo studies. What you can do, you can just put the structure in your software, and software will be able to predict you that whether this molecule is going to be a hit or miss. So their predictability may not be 100%, but right now may not be so much mature that it can predict 100%, but they can tell up to 80 to 90% that your molecule. So when your software says that this molecule is never going to be hit, you can reduce that molecule. You can omit that molecule for further assessment because it says 100% sure with assurity that your molecule is never going to be successful. So artificial intelligence is playing a big role in drug development research. And this artificial intelligence is applied in every area. Artificial intelligence tell you what is the toxicity is expected. It can tell you what is the efficacy is expected. Artificial intelligence can tell you what could be the clinical scenario, how human can react with the medicines, how it can react to the liver, how it can react to the kidney, how it can react with the brain. So artificial intelligence is one of the big area where pharmaceutical industry is spending lots of resources and their efforts so that to reduce the time, cost, and efforts so that they can make this average 12 years drug development research area to make it lesser, maybe 7 years or 8 years. Okay. Then big data analytics. So as you know that we are living in the area of data, right? If you open Facebook, you get so much data. So now suppose you have to do a research on somebody, what you do usually, you just search in Facebook his name or her name and then try to find out what he is doing, what is his social activity. So the data is always available. I think somebody is trying to ask a question. Is somebody trying to ask a question? By Vibhavari, you want to ask some question?
You can ask in chat during the session.
Yeah. So the data is already available in the public domain. What you have to do, you have to just analyze the data. Now, suppose you want to try understand that a drug, how it reacts. So now suppose you just open your Google web page and you write paracetamol. And then writing paracetamol, you will find out, hey, paracetamol, gastric problem, paracetamol, this problem, paracetamol, that problem. So you will get the data from Google itself, the data. You do not have to do clinical trials. You do not have to do that. So this is again big data analytics is one of the area that where pharmaceutical industry is investing lots of resources and their efforts so that they can get the data. Then precision medicine. Precision medicine is again that is something what we are targeting right now. So every medicine doesn't suit everyone. Now suppose somebody has some specific ailment, how good it would be if we can make a specific medicine for him. So there's a medicine available for known as Jaglosema, which costs around 13 crore. So costly, it's very costly. I agree with that. But that will be specifically made for the person. So what it does, it takes out the cells, dendritic cells from the person, and based on the dendritic cells, DNA and RNA composition, Pfizer make that medicine. They target specific mRNA, and that will cure the disease. So that medicine, if it is developed for person A, it will not work on person B. It is specifically for the medicine person A. So the precision medicine is going to be the next big thing happening in the pharmaceutical place. So there are lots of research on going this. I will not focus much on blockchain or flexible production because these are all related to production or additive manufacturing. That's I'm not going there because then there will be lots of discussion will happening. So there are many challenges happen in pharmaceutical manufacturing. You must have seen that some drug has expiry of 2 years, some drug has expiry of 3 years, some have expiry of 1 year. That's because of different manufacturing process. There are some chemicals are very sensitive to temperature or humidity. You cannot make them for longer, stable for longer time. So there are different complexity is there in production as well as blockchain. Then there are another big thing is the real world data. I had given already example that if you open a Google chat and Google, you can find out, you type a medicine's name, you will get lots of data. It will autofill. It will show that suppose you are trying to find out pantoprazole. It will say pantoprazole might have whatever the side effects and what are the indications people are using pantoprazole. The real world data, nothing can replace real world data. So whatever research is doing, that research is always remember that is something is in restricted environment and it is done with a defined target. So whatever research you are doing, that is either you are doing in animals or in clinical trials, that is with a limited population and a restricted environment. So the data, whatever you are getting from the research, it might not be fully reflective of what happens in real world. So real world data is another big thing. Then digital therapeutics. I do not know how many of you have seen that there are different drugs which can be used like insulin pump. So earlier what used to happen, irrespective of somebody's diabetes, somebody's blood glucose level, you have to take insulin injections maybe once a day or twice in a day. So nowadays what happens, there are pump available. What it does, it's implanted in the somebody's person's body and it measures blood sugar level. And based on the blood sugar level, it delivers the insulin. What exact amount of insulin is needed. So this is something digital. So it says mini computer is kept inside the human body and it will try to find out how much exactly is needed. And you must have seen many inhalers and then different type of respiratory device is day by day coming to the public domain, which can be used by patients and that can be used. So these are nothing. These are auto-programmed that will deliver to what actual amount of drug is needed. And as you know that if you have to take a systemic medicines, that dose is very high. Whereas if it is taken a respiratory routes to lungs, the dose is very minimum. So these are the another things, digital therapeutics, pharmaceutical companies spending lots of time. Then there is a curative therapies also. So I do not want to go much on there. Okay, so I think I have covered whatever maximum I could cover in 1 hour. So I actually spent 45 minutes. I thought that there will be multiple questions. So please feel free to ask me questions. I will try to resolve whatever questions. You may type in chat box, or you can ask me through microphone. I will try to answer your questions. Thank you.
So participant, please take the opportunity to make the questions before on Dr. Thakur. Okay, please ask questions directly to him.
Participants can unmute yourself and then ask questions directly.
Or you can type also in the message.
Now I've turned off the host controls. Now they can unmute themselves directly or send chat itself. Both ways we can handle. We can take questions.
So while people are asking questions, so I think these many participants here are in different types of academics or something. So I just want to tell you that pharmaceutical industry needs lots of researchers, and fortunately or unfortunately in India there are many scope of doing research in pharmaceutical, but unfortunately people are not available for doing pharmaceutical. So you are welcome. If anybody wants to and get involved in pharmaceutical research, please feel free, and maybe you can connect with me also. I'll write down my personal email ID. Please feel free to write an email to me.
Hello, Dr. Hitesh Parmar, you have raised your hand. You can ask questions. I had a question, sir. In the very first go, when it was the COVID first wave, I got infected. Thank God I was saved by doctors. I was administered this drug, Remdesivir. I think first day it was 2 vials, and then it was overall 3 more.
1 vial.
5
vials daily.
5 vials.
Yeah, total 5 vials. Correct.
So, overall, I would want to know what would be the risks going forward in life. What are the potential side effects of Remdesivir overall? And since it was not previously, as you rightly said, it was not allowed in people, or I think it was allowed for Ebola, a feline drug. You said
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
I want to know what are these precautions I should take, or what are the diagnostics I should go for, since overall I am recovered and I'm feeling fine, but I would want to be more healthier and more cautious, because this is not a normal drug you take every day. It's not paracetamol. So I would want to be more careful regarding this drug. I would want to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good question. So, doctor, what I try to tell you that, as you know, that COVID drugs, Remdesivir or whatever drug, it was not approved after going complete clinical trial. As this drug was not approved after doing clinical trial, the information available on Remdesivir was limited at that time when you had taken COVID, Remdesivir. However, after that, there are multiple clinical trials happened. So Remdesivir, what it does, it actually kills the viruses. It's supposed to kill the viruses. And we do not know how much it kills the viruses. However, having said that, Remdesivir is actually doesn't have too much of side effects as of now. Whatever information available, so you do not need to be very careful. It's okay. It's a safe drug.
Why am I asking you? You talked. I have been a chemistry student, and since I know something about stereochemistry and how viruses shapes are important, and if it was for Ebola, how does it work on this COVID? And my concern is it are success stories replicable? Like, you can take a drug for Ebola with whatever stereochemistry it had with Ebola and directly use it for example, COVID, which might have a different stereochemistry altogether.
You cannot directly take the direct. So that's why there are lots of research has been. That's called as repurposing. So now suppose a drug is already approved for some indications, you can repurpose that drug to other indications. For example, one drug is approved for renal cancer. Maybe you can repurpose that drug for enteric cancer or lung cancer. That is called repurposing.
No, what my concern is, I don't know if it was repurposed or it was just, for me, it was just Remdesivir. Were there changes made to it? No, because it was very first wave and I got infected. I didn't know I was asked to get remdesivir from the market, and even the hospitals did not have it, so I had to get it from the market. So I got remdesivir, and it helped my hypoxia. So I got my oxygen saturation improved post taking remdesivir. My concern, it did work. My concern is like, is it like they ported one antivirus drug from Ebola to like COVID, and
So that's what I'm trying to say. What they did, they actually do in vitro study to find out whether remdesivir is effective against COVID virus. So by doing research, it was seen that it is effective against COVID. And after that, there are multiple clinical trial happened. And I will tell remdesivir is not that if anybody takes remdesivir, he will be 100% get cured by remdesivir. Having said that, as now we do not have much alternatives like HIV, I told you there are 50 therapies available. However, for COVID, there are very limited. So we do not have too much of choice. That's why the remdesivir, favipiravir, or molnupiravir is getting used. So to answer your question, we are not for sure know that remdesivir can cure COVID or not. But having said that, we have been seen that it is better than placebo. It is seen than using nothing. So it can definitely cure patients if somebody is taking remdesivir.
Thank you for your answer. It helped. It did help my hypoxia after taking it. My oxygen saturation did improve, and I showed signs of improvement. But I had to spend around 15 to 18 days in hospital after administering remdesivir.
Great. Thank you. I don't think
Any
anybody
other
has any other
any other
question.
question from any other participant or experience they want to share?
I think Hitesh has raised his hand.
Yeah, Hitesh, can you, if you are, please, if you have raised your hand, please ask your question.
Hello. Sir, Hitesh is calling.
Yeah, Hitesh.
Sir,
Yeah, Hitesh.
you told in the total development of this drug is take 12 hours. Yeah, more
12
than.
years. Yes.
Sir,
That's an average.
it's include the new entities chemical process is also included in these 12 hours. Means
12. It's not 12 hours. It's a 12 years.
sorry, 12 years. It's
Yes.
a new entity is development by
Yes, yes.
chemical is also included in that.
Yeah. It actually takes 12 years and average. That doesn't mean every chemical will take 12 years. So this is the average time takes from identifying molecule to become a drug, successful drug.
Okay. Sir. And the test of these molecules, it's near how many years?
What?
For
Can you
testing,
repeat your question?
for testing,
Testing.
how many years it take time?
That's the total time, 12 years. Phase 1, preclinical to phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 to filing to get approval.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All together.
Any
Okay.
other question from anybody else?
Okay.
I think I have a question regarding the use of AI. Like, Sabir talked about AI being used in drug discovery or finding a match, basically. What softwares do you use and what infrastructure do you use? At times, why? Because like in US, there were projects like there were people who donated their computing power using a software which was built like an open source project where people could install that software and it could lend their computing power to the overall collective power where they can do the calculation in a collective manner, because not since they are, at least in your discussion I could find like it takes 12 hours for 12 years.
Yes.
It could drop down the discovery and match time considerably. Why? Because once a huge number of computers can be used for calculation, it would be a deterministic calculation, and it will be in finite amount of time, much lesser than 12 years. So can you elaborate?
Yeah, so I understand your question. So there are different type of software available. Maximum softwares you have to buy, and for using these softwares, you need to have a specific type of hardwares. Having said that, there are some free softwares also available. Maybe we can connect one to one. I can tell you some of the example. you can go to IBM website. IBM has multiple software which they give free of cost, which can be used for the drug development. But they are. If you have to use full capability of that softwares, you have to buy the
basically IBM Watson.
Buy.
You're talking about IBM Watson.
Exactly, IBM Watson.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that
exactly.
is basically not only a software. Basically, they provide you access to the trained AI, which works on IBM supercomputer. My question was like as in India, as a nation, we do have supercomputers, and do we have such software which can take the advantage of that supercomputer for drug discovery when it comes in to an emergency time? Or for example, as a nation, there are so many people who have computers and can plug in their computing resource to do a calculation. Do we have such software, or do you?
I do not know about all pharmaceutical company, but current pharmaceutical company where I'm working, we have the infrastructure for doing that.
Okay. So you have that.
We have. Yes.
Great,
I hope
great,
that
great.
Other pharmaceutical company also have.
Great.
I am not supposed to talk on behalf of them, but I believe they also have that.
Yes.
We have it. Okay. Thank you.
Sir, there is one question, sir. Question from Sri Lakshmi MS. It told, how is a drug candidate?
Yes. Very interesting question. So the question is, so now suppose a drug candidate, what we do, as I told you, high throughput scanning, HTS, high throughput screening. What we do, we manufacture hundreds of, so there is called drug library. You can buy this drug library from different companies where it will have millions of compounds. In this million of compounds, you have to screen. So now suppose you are trying to develop a drug as a painkiller. So what we have to do that now your mechanism of action is it should reduce prostaglandins. What you can do, you put a cells which produce prostaglandin and then you give these millions of compounds in each vials and then you measure prostaglandin levels. Now suppose you have a known compound which is a painkiller, for example paracetamol or diclofenac. Now paracetamol or diclofenac reduces prostaglandin level maybe 10 nanogram per ml. So that is your standard. So now you screen the compound, whichever compound reduce the prostaglandin level 10 nanogram or lesser than 10 nanogram per ml, that you will select as a prospective candidate and you develop as a further as a drug. Understood, Sri Lakshmi? That's one example I've given.
Okay. Lakshmi, reply please.
Yeah, thank you. I think, thank you guys. I started on time. I finished on time. Thanks. I'm looking forward for you. I have already given my personal email ID. If anybody wants any questions, please feel free to write a mail to me. Thank you.
Sir, can you provide the vote of thanks, sir?
Yes, sir, I'm good. So commonly there is a gap in between government organization and private organization, and what the research programs or R&D are commonly doing there, but we are very behind of this. So my proposal, and I thought that I would call one person from the government, non-government organization. So in this context, I called Dr. Anirban Mullik Thakur, and I think he has reduced the gap in between the government and private. Now, very finally, he has explained the importance of biologists in research, and particularly in respect of drug discovery and development. So very nicely he has given your queries, and I expect he will be always with us, and any questions and any queries will be given to him and for clarification, and we all have been benefited and learned a lot. Thank you, sir, for your kind presence and giving us such a nice talk before us. Thank you, sir.
Most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This video will be uploaded to YouTube, and if there are any queries, you can comment it out, and sir, also if you could check out the video and can reply to those questions as well. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Sir.
Thank you, everyone. Let's join back at 2:30.
Okay, Dr. Thakur. So you may go ahead, and I will continue some talks with our participant.
Sure. Thank you.
So participant, please stick with please share this. Please continue with this training program and share the screen. Now I'll call one by one. Okay, just for interaction. Just you will do your video on and then just introduce yourself thereafter. So first Rambabu Dharavat, that is from Telangana. Okay, please keep your video on and give your brief introduction. Okay, no. Oh. Sir, welcome to our training program, sir. I think Rambabu is not present. Sir, am I audible? Anyone?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, anyone? Rambabu, are you present, sir?
No, I don't see that name here.
Okay. Then Preeti Dilip Singh. Then Preeti, Dr. Preeti. Then Dr. Devi Prasad Isor. He was present. He was present. That I saw him. Okay. Then Bibekin Pachuri. You do not take as by taking your attendance or percentage. Just I want to share.
जी सर, नमस्ते सर.